with that, I think this is the... Wait, what? What was that? Oh, no. Okay, yes, I know. Yes, I know you guys want more Terraria guns. I know, I'm literally working on it right now. Okay, please, it's coming next week, please. I know. Well, look who's back for their hit of some sweet Terraria gun models. It's you, I'm talking about you. The first video I did, modeling Terraria's guns, did so well, I was absolutely floored. So thank you guys genuinely for that support. I really do just appreciate it beyond what you can imagine. Not only did you guys send me so much love in the comments, but you also gave me some great constructive criticism and wanted to see me model even more guns from Terraria, with some requests absolutely standing out more than others. So at this point, you all already know what Terraria is and what it's all about. So I won't gush about the game like I did in that first video. And if you haven't seen that video, please go check it out. I promise it's worth it. And you get to see me run through a short introduction of the game and what its weapons and stuff are kind of all about. How about this? I'll compromise and I'll play that video's intro, but like at crazy speed. Good, great. You caught up? Okay. Honestly, the game and the modeling we do here at this point doesn't need much introduction. So let's waste no more time and jump into these models because you guys have been chomping at the bit for more of this content. Okay, here we go. First up, the dart rifle. Of all the guns in Terraria, I think this one probably comes closest to resembling a postmodern or, I guess, near-future firearm design. A lot of games trying to hit that vibe saw the real-world Chris Vector and its sweet, sexy angled profile and just couldn't let it go. First thing that comes to mind for me is the Spitfire SMG from Black Ops 3. You see that influence in the dart rifle sprite as well. The angled extended magazine, the collapsible stock, and that distinctive downward slice at the front of the receiver. And just to be clear, I'm not knocking it, I actually love this kind of aesthetic. It's just funny to me that the one Terraria gun that feels the most grounded in near-future design shoots darts instead of bullets. But hey, that's Terraria for you. Jumping into the modeling process, if you watched my last Terraria gun video, and hey, thanks again for all the support on that one, the process kicks off pretty similarly, importing the original sprite into Plasticity, setting it to front-facing, and making it transparent. I will note, last time, for a few models, I created slightly enhanced vector references to better read off certain angles. For this video though, I kept it much simpler. 2 copies of the sprite, one for direct overlay, one for reference. Starting with that sleek angled receiver, I traced out a 2D profile and extruded it into a solid. I like blocking out basic shapes first before worrying about details, so we'll come back to this piece later. Moving to the front section, I tackled what I interpreted as an integrated angled foregrip and magwell combo kind of piece. Just like before, it's basic profile, then extrusion, and then a lot of bevel and fillet work and tweaking to make it feel sturdy and comfortable enough to handle repeated reloads. Once I was reasonably happy with it, I moved on before over-detailing it too early. We've got a lot of parts to cover, after all. Next was the magazine, definitely pulling heavy inspiration from the extended Glock mags you frequently see in something like the Chris Vector. I made a basic 2D profile and extruded it and set it into the magwell, angling it until the silhouette felt just right. I wasn't trying to get it perfect here. After that, I created a separate base plate solid to serve as the mag's bottom cap, rotated everything back into place, and called it good just for now. Then came the handle, or like the back pistol grip. One thing I really appreciate about making these videos is the constructive criticism you all give me. A lot of you pointed out in the last video that my handles don't look super comfortable. And honestly, you're definitely right. Handle design is still a weak point for me, especially in a hard surface focused program like Plasticity, but I'm trying to get better with every model. I spent extra time trying to shape this one, tweaking the curve handles and bevels before extruding. It's still not perfect, I know, but progress is progress, and I'm just trying to get better with each one. With the handle, mag, and foregrip kind of roughed in and blocked out, I went back to the receiver and started adding some sharper profiling and cuts. I chamfered the main edges with angled fillets and created a rectangle solid to act as a boolean cutter for the barrel slot, giving the cut some angled edges so it would feel sharper and more, I don't know, all together rather than just a boring rectangle. Originally, I was going to create a standard cylinder barrel, but when I matched it to the sprite's proportions, I realized the way that I scaled the overall weapon already, I just made it too slim for it to fit and look right. So instead, I leaned into the lightweight and like tactical, again, near future vibe and created a more rectangular, square, angular, kind of osprey suppressor inspired barrel shroud, giving it a mix of fillets and internal barrel detail. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. At the back of the gun, I built the collapsible, or technically telescopic, I don't actually know, stock. This was my own interpretation based on the sprite. The original sprite definitely does show a stock back there, but since the dart rifle feels like a compact PDW type weapon, I designed it more to look like a CQB kind of like shoulder stock choice for the build. Simple profile, extrusion, and bevels, and 2 metal guide rails extending into the weapon frame. I also quickly dropped in a trigger and added some like side plates to make the stock's ratcheting mechanism a little bit more believable. Now, I couldn't put it off any longer. The purple parts. They're a huge part of the dart rifle's identity. Rather than just like coloring the sections of the receiver purple in Blender later, I decided to model them separately. I guess almost like an aftermarket like carbine conversion kit for a Glock. I created slightly oversized solids following the sprite's areas and then booleaned through the frame to make them kind of like float around the core weapon and frame body. I also added a front flashlight where the sprite kind of has a lip at the front. Since we already had a foregrip, a tactical kind of insert just felt a little bit more fitting here. That was all I could really come up with. After beveling and polishing those frame pieces, I added some more small details to bring the whole build together. Shell ejection port, even though realistically the stock support would block the bolt. That's my fault. Vent cuts in the port inspired by, I'll be honest, sometimes what you would see on Nerf guns, and a cut-in top rail that sits between those purple kind of frame extensions that we added earlier. I thought it actually looked kind of nice. To finish it off, I detailed the handle and foregrip with some raised kind of grippy panels by slicing, and also added in the optics seen on the sprite, and a bolt charging handle, and then some screws on those side panels so they wouldn't still remain floating, but still looked like it kind of connected to the main frame of the body. Then there was a few more final tweaks, but after that it was off to Blender for some texturing, shading, and rendering. And here is that final result. Overall, I think there are certainly some areas I wish I would have went back and improved, like maybe some additional detailing on the front angled grip area. The receiver frame as well, I realized I just left so much detail on the cutting room floor I could have added, but the end result certainly isn't horrible. I like how it gives that compact PDW vibe, and for a design with lots of angled profiles and such, I was worried going into the end result wouldn't have a cohesive identity. But I think I was able to avoid that altogether, so yeah. I think it's a solid, alright, out of 10, but no worries because we still got 2 more guns to make, so let's go! Ooh la la, the Onyx Blaster. One you guys heavily requested I recreate in 3D. It's like this shotgun-ish type weapon, from what I understand. Look, in the game I just click and shoot, okay? Give me a break. But it also fires some kind of dark energy blast as an alternate mode. Anyway, not wanting to repeat the same mistake I made with the Vortex Speeder in the last Terraria episode. Yes, okay, I now know very clearly it's a grenade launcher and not a grip, I get it now. I kept all that in mind when starting the model. From the original sprite, I interpreted it as having 2 barrels stacked on top of each other, a top barrel for the standard kind of shotgun-y blast, and a slightly wider bottom barrel for the alternate dark energy shot. Underneath it all, a classic pump-action shotgun grip. I knew the back part of the weapon with all of its curves would be more involved anyways, so I trusted my gut and started with these barrels and built off of them. Both barrels share the same height, but like I said, that bottom one is wider, almost like it needs like extra room to unleash all that chaotic dark energy spread. Instead of using basic cylinders, I profiled them as rounded rectangles. I just thought it vibed better with the slight fantasy sci-fi feel of the gun. After extruding those solids, I moved on to the racking mechanism, the rounded grip you see on pump-action shotguns, and the rail it would slide on. Bit of bevel work, cut the grip to slot into the rail properly, and bored out the barrels using a more rounded rectangle cuts. With that foundation built, I turned my focus moving further back of the weapon. I interpreted that big looped structure as some kind of like thumbhole stock grip, I guess similar to what you can see in certain like old rifle stock handle designs. Using curved profiles, I roughed out the loop, extruded it, and softened the edges with more bevel passes. At this point, I realized the barrel stretched too far back. I needed room for the receiver section. This is the area that would theoretically handle loading, unloading, and ammo cycling. I freeballed this part a bit, loosely based on the sprite, and I'll be honest, it might not be 100% accurate to the original design, so for all of you who requested this weapon, I apologize in advance if I messed it up, but hey, let's keep rolling. After roughing out the receiver, I made sure the lower half was wider to match up cleanly and evenly with the two different barrel sizes. Once I saw that in place, it felt just way too boring, just a rectangle matching the barrels, so I spiced it up a bit, added some sloped walls, beveled edges, and some extruded faces on the sides. I wanted the receiver to feel beefier, more mechanically interesting, I guess, and not just meld into the barrels like a sad brick, I guess. Once it felt purpose-built enough, I added a trigger and two muzzle solids to the ends of the barrels. Then it was time to circle back to that receiver again, because it needed to do things, or at least look like it could do things. I took a lot of creative liberty here, and frankly, I think that's fair because the sprite is pretty hard to visually read. I started by cutting a rectangle-ish opening into the right side of the receiver that connects to the barrel, a logical spot for loading ammo, especially for a shotgun-like weapon, and then I did some bevel passes to polish it up. But even with that, the top receiver felt weirdly empty, I suppose. So, simple fix, I turned the top of it into an integrated optic, cut through the top with a cylinder so it had a visible pass-through line of sight, and yeah, I actually kind of really like that. From there, I started building what would serve as what I kind of referred to as the energy cell, the ammo for this sci-fi shotgun. I needed it to power both the top and bottom barrels logically, so the cell has a large chunky base section and a smaller kind of top inserted section for the upper barrel. I added a little I guess mini Tesla coil style firing pin thing behind that top cell, and I don't know, it's pretty minor and probably could have done without it, but hey, it's there. Then came the question, how the hell does the energy feed into the bottom barrel from the energy cell? First, I tried some connecting tubes running down the left side. It looked okay at first, but it didn't feel right for the original design. So I replaced it with a ridiculous almost like GPU water block inspired solid system, and yeah, that looked even worse. Way too messy, so I scrapped it. What I finally landed on was a slimmed down angled solid connecting the energy cell to the bottom barrel with a faint, I guess eventually what would become glowing tube element showing the energy transfer inside. I even added a tiny digital screen on the top, partly to fill the space because I figured it could display charge levels for the alternate fire mode. And honestly, it turned out pretty cool. Before I forget, I also added those glowing purple side accents from the sprite. I cut into the barrels with some angled profiles and inset some new matching solids. And later I'll slap on some emission shaders to make them glow nicely in Blender, kind of like as heat vents, which I think technically they're supposed to be. To finish the plasticity modeling phase, I added grippy detailing to the racking and handle grip parts, and built out some internals for the barrels. Because, come on, it's a fantasy sci-fi gun. Empty barrel tubes would be pretty lame when I can make them look much cooler. Inside the top barrel, I created sort of like a railgun-inspired array of octagonal loops connected by an internal frame. It might look a little weird here in plasticity, but trust me, it looks pretty cool once it's rendered. From the bottom barrel, since it's meant for like that chaotic energy blast, I kept it much simpler. Just 5 heavy, solid things at the rear, kind of acting as some kind of like energy dispersal unit. Again, I kind of designed these with the intent of adding glowing shaders in the future, so I didn't put a lot of detail here anyways. And speaking of Blender, I think it's time we finally bring it in there and get to the fun part. Texturing and final rendering. I really hope you guys like this one, especially considering how much you requested it. But no running away now, here's the Onyx Blaster from Terraria, fully reimagined in 3D. Overall, I think I did okay with this one, but again, I'm quite nervous to see how you guys feel about it, considering how highly this was requested to be modeled. I think the only thing I massively regret with this model is there's a lack of detail on the sides of the weapon, especially the right side, as at least the left side has that like loading mechanism thing I made for the bottom barrel. Which gives it more personality, but I am happy with how those glowing heat vents came out on the side. I love the way the emission shaders don't make the entire section glow, but instead kind of like around the edges, like the energy is like leaking out, like real heat from real dark energy. And I always love internal barrel elements that glow, to see the light bounce around and reflect off the metal sides of the barrel. Like, yeah, definitely not a bad end result. We've got one more model to show off, and this one genuinely drove me a little crazy, so I'm eager to get into it and tell you guys all about it. Let's go. The Gatligator. Man, another shining example that maybe, just maybe, Relogic has a bit of a gun furry thing going on. They love their aquatic animal themed weapons. And no, before you even say it, I'm still not modeling the mini shark. I'm putting my foot down. I am not modeling a friggin' shark or dolphin in hard surface plasticity. Just the thought of that gives me anxiety. Thankfully, the Gatligator's design isn't trying to be an actual alligator. It just has a few subtle accents that hint at the inspiration. It's a wildly inaccurate, fast-firing machine gun, and while the name does shove Gatling into it, let's be very clear up front, this thing is not a Gatling gun. How do I know? Well, real Gatling guns don't have a barrel in the center. They spin multiple barrels around a central point, and don't fire from the middle. Anyway, let's just get to the modeling before I spiral too hard over this design. Starting off, I went straight for the standout piece, that big middle ammo drum. Visually, it's the centerpiece, and it's probably the functional one too. Now, look, I don't expect Terraria weapons to make perfect mechanical sense, but I try to at least imply some level of, like, plausible believability. And this drum, oh my god, was the beginning of so many problems. Oh. See, the Gatligator isn't a Gatling gun at all. Not even close. Gatling guns rotate multiple barrels into a firing position at the top. This thing has one barrel stuck right in the center. So I figured, okay, well, maybe the drum is just an ammo drum, and it rotates bullets instead of the barrels. But that raises a new nightmare. How would rotating a ring of bullets around a central barrel, like, even work? You'd have to somehow rotate the cartridge up, drop it downward into the center, chamber it, and fire, instead of just, you know, like just using a belt or a magazine like a normal person. I'm not gonna lie, most of the modeling footage here is just me trying to invent some kind of cursed internal logic that could maybe justify this weapon working. At one point, when I exported the model into Blender, I accidentally imported the entire hidden set of solids from my previous failed drum designs, because I wasn't even sure which version was more cursed, so I just kept it and forgot. In the end, the final design is stupid, impractical, and basically non-functional. The idea is, in theory, the bullets sit in little inserts around the outer drum, and when rotated to the top, they drop down into the center to be fired. And then I guess somehow they slide through this cut I made in the drum to be expelled from the front. I don't know, whatever, man. Oh, and I couldn't even load the drum fully either, because the top position needs to be empty so you can actually see through a cutout to the front sight. You know, that front sight, one of the few parts that actually hints at the alligator theme, so it has to be actually usable in theory for it to be important. Speaking of parts that do make sense, let's move on to the two easier sections: the front barrel system and the rear receiver and stock. For the front barrel, the sprite makes it pretty clear. The front sight acts as, like, I guess the alligator's eyes from the side, kind of slanted and angry, kind of just due to the fact it's pixel art, but with the barrel flanked top and bottom by these kind of solid pieces that are then lined with what would be jagged teeth. I modeled those top and bottom supports as, I guess, kind of sturdy hand grip pieces, and beveled their corners for comfort. Then I added 3 triangle solids per side to represent the teeth. I kind of constructed them in like a metalworked, stylized look instead of trying to make them literally look like gator teeth or be like super sharp or something. I was going for like a mechanical alligator metal statue artwork thing, whatever. And for that angry eye front sight, I made sure to slice it down at a downward angle to really sell the furious expression, ready to chomp down on the enemy with its broken ammo drum. Moving on to the back half, the receiver, handle, and stock were actually pretty straightforward and pretty basic. It looked to me like the sprite was inspired by like the classic Thompson machine gun. I could have actually referenced a real Tommy gun 1-to-1 for this, but honestly, the whole weapon was already cursed enough. I figured, why not just freeball it, see what comes out. So I roughed out a blocky receiver profile and extruded it, and like with the dart rifle, spent a bit of extra time trying to improve my handle design, so tweaking those curves and kind of radius handles to feel a bit more natural and ergonomic before beveling everything down. Oh, I also threw in a basic trigger as well. Then the stock. In the sprite, it looks comically small, but to be fair, that's probably just because of like pixel space constraints. I usually try to stick to the sprite's like original footprint or proportions, but here I cheated just a little bit and I stretched the stock longer to feel slightly more natural in its 3D form. So again, this is a basic extrusion, centered, and beveled. Some final touches: I added a pretty simple rear sight, and even though the left side isn't visible in the original sprite, I threw in like a mock Gatling style crank lever to spin the drum, because apparently the Gatligator had to just justify the name somehow, even if it doesn't actually operate like a real Gatling gun. Obviously, there were a bunch of other smaller details, but the truth is this model took me forever because of that stupid cursed drum I just kept trying to create and make sense. At a certain point, I just had to call it finished for the sake of my own sanity. So I threw it into Blender, crossed my fingers, and hoped some good old material magic and lighting would save it. And honestly, it kind of did. Yeah, I mean, for all this model's shortcomings, the renders actually came out quite nice. I do like the brushed brass casings and ammunition playing with the lighting attached to the drum. And the emission shader I added to the front sight came out, like, super badass. Regardless of how cursed I might feel it is, classic wood mixed with scratched metal and smooth brass is one hell of an appearance. So ultimately, in a weird, humorous way, the Gatligator became one of my favorites. Ugh, I actually can't believe I wrote that in the script and then just said it. So yeah, there it is. 3 more guns from Terraria, converted from 2D pixel art to 3D models. I really hope you guys like genuinely enjoyed this video, so please let me know what you think down below in the comments. Oh, and before I get too ahead of myself, if you liked these models and haven't seen the first video I did modeling Terraria guns, definitely go check it out on my channel. Those came out just as good, if not better, honestly, than these, so definitely worth a watch if you feel so inclined. Dropping videos consistently every Sunday has definitely been some blood, sweat, and tears to pull off, that's for sure. And any support I get from you guys just watching these videos now that I'm part of the YouTube Partner Program, which is all thanks to you guys, seriously, thank you, is a huge help to keeping me going. So thank you. And with all that being said, I think I can finally move on to my next destination. Hopefully a short breather away from pixel art. Am I right? Wait. Well, time to get to work. Psst, let me know which Enter the Gungeon gun is your favorite. Maybe I'll choose it to be modeled for next week's video. Okay, bye!